you looking to sharpen your budgeting skills? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Budget Couple Podcast, where we talk about life, family, and how to afford it. And now, the Budget Couple themselves, Nate and Danielle.
Welcome to the Budget Couple Podcast. I'm Nate.
And I'm Danielle.
And this week we're going to talk about our month of October. It was would you say, unnecessarily expensive month for us, or?
It's the beginning of a very unnecessarily expensive few months for us.
It's spending season because we're going into Christmas and we have a lot of family birthdays, and we had a couple things around the house that needed to be taken care of and wound up costing us more money than we were planning on. So it was a expensive month for us, and we're just going to kind of break down how we figure out what to do with our budget, kind of how we spend the money and all of that. So to dive into everything, when I looked at our budget this morning, we had $8,500 in our checking account. Now, at the end of every month, we kind of look at our stuff and we go over and pay it, make sure everything adds up, and we're good there. Prior to that, Danielle, you had already paid 2 of our credit cards. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we already had our one that we get, the City Double Cash card. We had that paid for, and then we also had our Saver card, which we use for dining and going out. So those are already taking out, so we're not worried about that. But we do have a number of other credit cards because that's just kind of how we do things. We have a Best Buy card that we pay money towards.
Nate has all of his crap on.
Pretty much it's just me spending stuff on technology, but I also bought my sister a computer, so it's on there as well. We also have a Amazon store card, mainly because the points for that are 5%.
Yeah, you don't get 5% too many other credit cards. So, and we do regularly spend at least a few hundred a month on Amazon. So.
And then finally, we have a new credit card to our lives. We got a Capital One Venture card. And this was mainly because we're going to be doing a little bit of traveling this summer. And the Venture card is meant for traveling and rewards points. And it basically is a travel eraser. Danielle, you had a card like this a long time ago, and this is kind of an upgraded version of it, correct?
Yeah, it's a $95 a year fee, but we're actually not going to end up paying for that. The sign-up offer waived the first year, and we're going to cancel before the $95 the next year. We're actually just using it to help pay for some of our trips this summer, or parts of our trip this summer. And it also gave us a $600 bonus for signing up if we basically spent money on it, which we definitely are. So it was a good deal. But all that to say, we have quite a few credit cards floating around out there, and I will just point out yet again. I know we've said this over and over again, but we pay our credit cards off completely at the end of every month. And we don't put anything on that credit card that we haven't already budgeted onto our Excel spreadsheet ahead of time before the month starts. So we know exactly what's going on those credit cards, and we pay them off completely at the end of every month. They are literally there because it's easier for us to track and because we like getting the reward points. So that's our reasoning for credit cards. And just to kind of cap off what Nate was saying about how many credit cards we had there around.
Right. Each credit card serves a purpose, and we're not overspending on them. They're not borrowed against anything. We're just spacing things out or using them for very specific purposes. And when that purpose goes away, we cancel the card. Even though that technically hurts our credit, we're not super worried about that because we don't need credit for anything in the foreseeable future, hopefully here. So we're kind of floating pretty with all those cards and kind of going through and getting those set up. So let's talk about why this month was a bigger surprise, a bigger expense than what we did, and then we'll break down kind of what each expense wound up being. First off, it was Danielle has a birthday in October, so we got her something, and it was a little more expensive than what we normally do for birthdays. Birthdays tend to be about $100 or so. This year, Danielle is celebrating an anniversary of her 29th birthday, so we went through and got her, she got a Nintendo Switch because she loves video games, and she takes a train every day, so this is a perfect way to have portable video games. And yes, we're in our early 30s, and we still play video games, and it's awesome.
100%. And it was, we actually saved money really technically on my birthday because the plan had originally been to go back to Broadway to see the play that I absolutely love. And that would have been like $500. So the Switch was a little less.
Yes, we still spent money, so it's not saving. But
I know. I'm just kidding, by the way.
we spent money. We spent less money than what we were kind of thinking about possibly spending. So that was a bigger hit to our budget than what we had necessarily anticipated. again, worthwhile expense that we could totally cover, but just something that was extra on the budget. Another thing that we had extra on our budget was our pressure relief valve in our house.
Pressure relief valve, for those who can't understand, Nate.
Sorry, I pronounce things funny sometimes. But basically, in our basement, right behind where we're recording, actually, we have our water main coming into our house. And directly above that is a pressure relief valve that regulates how strong the water pressure is in our house. Now, apparently, didn't know this at all, but they go bad after a little while. And ours was starting to rattle, and you could hear it throughout the entire house.
Our water pressure is also insane, and I just kind of thought that was the way it was. But apparently, there was some amount of our relief valve not working completely properly, so the pressure was way too high, which apparently can lead to your faucets and other sorts of appliances failing sooner than what they should because they have all this water pressure going through them.
Yeah, they're designed for like a max of like 50 to 70 PSI, and ours was shooting out more than that. So that could have led to a big problem in our house if either that relief valve had totally failed and we got full water pressure, or it just being higher pressure than normal had flooded our house somehow. So we had to have a plumber come out. They told us exactly what we kind of thought it was, and they came out another day after that and came and replaced it. But that was almost a $500 bill.
Yeah, it's not fun, and kind of came out of nowhere. We didn't know it was an issue, and we didn't know how that expensive it would be either.
No.
So.
Now, if you're in a situation like this where an unexpected house expense comes up, because if that wasn't fixed, if that potentially caused the problem where it flooded our house, that's potentially a lot more money than what the $500 fix was. And this is the purpose of an emergency fund, is that if you have something like that that comes up that there's real no planning for, that happens, you have a fund set up to take out of that. Now, we're lucky in the sense that we had enough money left over at the end of the month to cover that. But that also meant that $500 didn't go onto our house instead of like what we would have wanted it to. It got put in, I guess it got put directly into the house, but not
it went
on
towards our house.
Yeah, it just didn't go on the mortgage. So it was a little different than normal, but it got covered, and it's what we needed to do.
Yeah. So, just to recap here, we had my birthday, which Nate,
I went a little crazy this month.
He went way too crazy on it. But we had that expense. We had the plumber, which we hadn't really realized was coming. We also have a bunch of bills due at this time of the month. We have car insurance that ends up around this time of year,
which we haven't paid yet.
But not due yet. And we have life insurance, and I'll just put a very quick plug in. You've heard us say it before, but go with term life insurance and get yourself like a 20-year term. It's super cheap, especially if you're willing to do a physical and you're fairly healthy, fairly young. It's cheap, but is also awesome because it can get you $500,000 of coverage. And the 20 years, after 20 years, hopefully you guys have your house paid off wherever you're at in your life, and you won't need it after that. So that's our thinking on the life insurance.
Right. Just to throw another version of that in there. Life insurance is there not to cover funeral expenses or anything like that. What we view life insurance as is a way to make sure that the family is provided for after we're gone. So if we both have 20-year terms, Danielle's is around $300 a year. Mine's around $400 a year. And we both have roughly $500,000 of coverage on us. So if I were to die, Danielle would get $500,000 from that, and then some other money from work and those type of things. But the plan is that we've both already agreed to is that money would go to paying off the house. And then we'd have money left over to do what we needed to with our son, or whatever time they would need off to hopefully grieve and go through all of that. But basically the idea here is that we want to pay off our house because that's our number one expense. That's where most of our money goes to. And after that, whoever's left over living is going to have some money left over to do whatever they need to do or see fit with. There are other versions of that where you get roughly 10 times what your income is, and then you invest that, and then whatever you earn on interest, you use as basically an income supplement. That's another way to do it. We just decided that, hey, we want to pay off the house because then the person living doesn't have that expense and that worry anymore.
Yeah. So sorry for that total sidetrack there.
Absolutely.
This is going to be the podcast of rambling because this is what we do. I mean, we just thought we would take a break from our normal answering questions and go through how we think about money. And like when we sit down at night and pull up our spreadsheet, we go off on tangents and we think through things. So apologies ahead of time.
Yeah, this is basically what we do the last day of every month or the last week of every month. We bring up the spreadsheet and start talking, bring up our bills and start talking and just figure out to make sure everything adds up and that we can afford everything. And then we just talk about random other budget related items that may or may not matter.
It gives us a chance to just kind of, reconnect with money and just chat each month. But anyway, all right. So lots of expenses. We have my birthday. We have the plumbing. We have insurance. We also are in desperate need of tires on our Leaf. Though we have to look at the warranty because the thing only has 20,000 miles and our tires look like crap. So, but either way, regardless, we have that coming up. We need to do that before the winter time. And we also have a vet bill coming up. And if any of you out there have pets, you know how freaking expensive vet bills are now, even for just a checkup. So that's coming up as well. And then we celebrate Christmas. So as do most of our friends and family. So we have all of those presents to start thinking about and start collecting over the next few months. So I think that's about all the bigger expenses that we have coming
that we can plan for right now.
Yeah, that we're thinking about. And so it's a lot, and we're trying to even that out a little bit during the months of October, November, and December. We're trying to figure out where it fits on our budget. As Nate said, we're lucky enough to be able to not really have to dip into savings when this sort of thing happens, when everything kind of comes at us at once. Usually we can spread it out a little bit, and what we do is we take a hit on how much extra we can put towards the house or how much extra we can put towards a retirement account or something like that. So it's nice in that way that we're not too worried about jumping into savings or not being able to make ends meet, but it does suck because we aren't meeting all of our goals maybe for those couple months.
Yeah, and we've actually gone through and readjusted our budget recently to kind of try to account for this. Now, at one point, we talked about being able to go through and trying to kind of figure out what those expenses are and average them out over the course of the year and building up our savings. And we tried that for a little while. We just found that it didn't work for us. Mathematically, it makes total, complete sense. Very easy to do mathematically. But as far as the actual practice and discipline of it, we found that we just weren't the best at it. So we threw that aside. And what we did instead was we changed how we budget a little bit. We went through and reassigned some categories, reassigned how we spend on those categories. And I think we've seen a better overall outcome for that.
Yeah, we actually, so I tried to work backwards. I work better when I think through the budget on my own a little bit and then talk to Nate about my ideas, and then we sit down and we work on it together. But I like initially working by myself.
She's a little bit of a loner sometimes.
Yeah. So anyway, I like to work backwards. So I thought about our budget. I'm like, okay, well, let's just think about all the things we really absolutely want to put towards each month. Obviously there's all the stuff we have to spend. And then beyond that, we have our extra that we put on our house each month. And then even beyond that, we're thinking about maybe increasing our retirement even more or opening a non-retirement account. So getting a mutual or opening up a mutual fund and just putting money towards that as something that's maybe not tied to our retirement accounts. So we've been thinking a lot about what to do with extra money. I mean, that's just something that comes up a lot with us on the best way to handle that. So in my eyes, what I did was, okay, I know we want to pay the house off in 10 years. We have we just refinanced to 15 years.
We should have waited a little longer.
Yeah. Yes. Never know though. But our goal though is to get it done in 10 years. That would be just really awesome in our eyes. So we'd love to have that house paid off by the time our son starts high school. I mean, that would just be great. So 10 years is our goal. And to do that, we have to put an extra $900 into the house each month. And it sounds like a lot, but it's within our means to do it. And so I put that into the budget. We also have been wanting to increase our donations. So we increased our donations each month as well. And we recently increased the amount that we put into our son's college fund as well. So those are some areas that we changed up. And essentially, I have everything I have everything set that like on the things that we want to do. And then I work backwards from there. I'm like, okay, we have this much money left, you know, whatever it may be. I can actually split it up on our budget here. You know, we have a few $100s left. I'm going to increase our miscellaneous budget and actually really try and track some of these miscellaneous expenses that we have each month that tend to not get put anywhere. And, you know, they can be as simple as a gift, like, oh, we spent $100 on a gift. It's too much to put on our miscellaneous because then it would just blow our whole budget. So we just kind of don't put it anywhere and it doesn't get tracked. So instead, we're increasing our miscellaneous budget. And we increased it by a lot.
Yeah, it's a significant increase, but there's a reason for it, and I think it's worked out well so far.
Well, I mean, this is the first month. This next month in November will be our first full month with it, really. And yes, we increased it a lot. But before I did that, I made sure we were meeting all of our goals elsewhere, essentially. And I feel like increasing it will actually help us stay on track and track ourselves a little bit better. At least that's what I'm hoping.
Yes, absolutely. We also went through and increased our restaurant or going out budget, not by a lot, but our son's eating more food and it's costing us more money. So we decided to increase it just a touch, just to account for a little bit of increased expenses. We also like to take our parents out for food every so often. And on the previous budget, when we would do that, we basically couldn't go out. We'd go out the one time with our parents and maybe one other time as a family, and we'd be done for the month. We generally like to try to eat out once a week.
Once or twice a week.
Yeah, it's nothing purposeful. It's just kind of what we've kind of grown accustomed to, and we realized we could save a lot of money if we didn't do that.
But we enjoy it.
But we do like it, and our son likes it, and it's a small luxury that we're able to afford for ourselves. So we did go ahead and increase that. And then the final thing that we increased was our own personal budgets. And we increased these by $50 a piece. So $100 a month extra onto our personal budgets that we can really just spend how we want. And let's just go, Danielle said she worked backwards, but let's just talk about some of the backwards there. I got a pay increase at the start of the school year of roughly $4,000. So while we increased all these other areas, we still have more money in our overall bank account.
Which surprisingly doesn't end up being that much per pay.
No, it's definitely not
not a lot at all.
It's not as much per pay, but it is covered by what we increase. So we increase things, but it's also reflected in increased income. So we actually still are able to meet the goals we want and meet the needs that we want pretty easily and still fit within the budget confines that we were used to.
And, you know, I don't want to give the impression that, oh, they kept going over budget, so they just increased their budget. That's not always the answer. And we rarely do that, to be honest. Usually we try and reel ourselves back in and stay within the budget. But particularly with the miscellaneous category, we were really struggling to track those things. And we just kept going over. And we realized, you know, we're not overspending necessarily, but we just have these things that aren't being taken into account in our budget. So that's the reason we increase that, to try and make sure we stick within a specific boundary. And so we'll see how it works. We'll let you guys know. This is what we do. We just kind of go back and forth with our budget, adjust it, make little changes. We don't necessarily change it every month, but we do take stock of it every so often.
Absolutely. I mean, we've been married over 10 years and we've been budgeting like this for over 10 years. And every year I'd say our budget has been slightly different. Sometimes multiple times a year, just because we try to reflect our own habits and what works for us. And I think we've been pretty successful in doing that. So getting back to the beginning of the episode, we said we had $8,500 in checking and that our goal was to try to put $900 extra on the house. Now, that did not happen because of mainly the water issue that we had to take care of, but we did wind up with roughly a $400 surplus in our checking account. So at the end of the month, after we paid everything, we had $400 left over at the end of the month. If it had not been for the plumbing issue, we would have had $900 to put on the house, and we kind of fit right in where we want to be. So while we had a lot of extra expenses and things that not necessarily were planned on, we were able to account for them in our budget, plan for them in our budget, and accommodate them in our budget. And that's what we're trying to do with our budget, is make sure that we have things tracked, accounted for, and that we know what's going to happen when.
And I mean, if you don't have that luxury of being able to have that cushion, if you are already breaking even and then you have this extra expense, first of all, try and make sure you always have a crash fund. So if something like the plumbing issue happens, you can use your crash fund to take care of that in 1 month. Other things, try and space things out. Like our car insurance isn't due until January, but we might go ahead and pay it next month or in December if we have the money during that month, because we just want to get it taken care of. We don't want to put it off. But if you can put it off and you're breaking even 1 month, but you're going to have a little bit of a surplus the next month, wait, Also try and work with your budget. If you are breaking even and you have something coming up, try and lower a couple of those categories. If you can do without the eating out a few times that month, then do that. Or whatever it may be, maybe you go a little bit cheap on your grocery budget, or don't take that long drive to the beach. Whatever it may be, try and reduce so that you have money for something else. And we've had to do that. We've had to do that kind of thing multiple times. So it's not saying our way is always the best, but
no, it's definitely not. But we do what works for us, and we try to be real here on the podcast and show you how we go through our journey of budgeting. And this is just what's been working for us recently.
Yeah.
So with that said, first off, thanks so much for listening. If you have not already, if you could, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast player of choice. And also tell a friend. It's the best way to grow the show. We keep seeing increased people listening, and we really, really appreciate that. It means a lot to us, and really helps us motivate us to keep putting out the show on a timely manner and to do all the things associated with that. But again, if you have any questions, please go to our website, budgetcouple.com, and then click on that contact form. We'll get back to you. Maybe not super quick, but we will get back to you. And we appreciate everything that you guys have done for us and helping us work through our budgeting issues as much as we hopefully help you.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Budget Couple Podcast with your hosts, Nate and Danielle. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit budgetcouple.com. Make sure to check out the next episode of the Budget Couple Podcast, where we'll talk more about life, family, and how to afford it. We'll catch you next time.